Good morning and welcome back to Community Couch Time. I'm Ms. Guadalupe Carrasco Cardona, and I'm going to come to you daily with topics that we should be talking about, things that are happening globally, things that are happening nationally, things that are happening in our community, but most importantly, things that we oftentimes don't talk about. And the question is, why shouldn't we? And the thing that's really amazing is that we get to share our perspectives with another amazing human being, Miss Tiffany Wallace.
Good morning, great minds and good people. I'm Miss Tiffany Wallace, and thank you for having me for Community Couch Time. Now, let's start the discourse.
Good morning and welcome back to Community Couch Time. Today is a very special day. How are you, Miss Wallace?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Miss Cardona?
Also, this is probably one of my favorite days of the year, Dia de Muertos. And it's really cool that we get to spend a little bit of time together for this special day for our ancestors. Yeah.
Yes, it's a holiday that I didn't grow up celebrating, but as I've grown older, it's something that I appreciate. Knowing about Dia de los Muertos, um, and just remembering our ancestors, where we've come from, and how far we've come to this point is very special to me.
Yeah, it's special because it's very beautiful, it's very inspirational. It keeps us connected to who we are, but it's also this really powerful way for us to remember all of the things that our ancestors have done for us, right, to be here today. And so I find it something that's also like resistance, right? Like we're resisting this sort of hegemonic attempt for our history to be erased, which I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it has been, but
Yeah.
still, it's an opportunity for us to reclaim what we can, right?
I very much agree with that, and that resonates with me. And sometimes I hear phrases like, I am not my ancestors, because of the way that people perceive folks from the past.
Right.
But so we come from very strong people to be here to this point today.
Right.
And a lot of people in history have fought and have resisted, and that's why we're here. And that doesn't mean we don't continue to strive for a better life and a better world,
Right.
but it does mean that we every single win is something that we appreciate, something that we acknowledge, because we'll be those ancestors at that time, and the work that we've done is significant too. And
Right. And I also think of like in my family, I know that there have been some serious mistakes that have been, you know, have been done from some of my ancestors very close to me. And so I also think about learning from those mistakes, but also forgiving them because they are also products of these generations and generations of trauma, essentially. And so with that said, which ancestors are you bringing into this space right now?
well, I am bringing an ancestor who we recently lost, my cousin Richard. So I have his um, memorial flyer here, and it talks a lot about his life. He actually worked on constructing the 110 freeway after an earthquake, and the 105, and the Bay Bridge in Oakland.
Oh, in the bigger.
Yes. So, not only was he he's a huge Celtics fan, so our family made it. And like it's the Boston Globe, even though he's from Watts. I don't know how that happened, but there you go.
Yeah,
But he was
beautiful.
yeah, and he was part of a union, like we're work with UTLA. He was part of a union too, and his coworkers came to the service and talked about stories and how positive he was, and
Mm.
just some pictures
Yeah.
of him, and when he was a young man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
He was,
it's very special.
yeah. I've
Here
never
he is
seen it.
working on the bridge.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Y'all did a
So
really good job with that Boston Globe special edition.
that's right. That's right. And it may not be in the Boston Globe in the newspaper, but it's a special edition for us.
Yeah,
And my family worked on that really hard. And
yeah.
there's a lot of pictures and stories, but yeah, so want to
Who
remember that.
who is that other beautiful person next to him?
That's my mother, Alice, and she was a wonderful person. And we used to carry like old clothes and old shoes in the cars to give to homeless people and houseless people. Like we just had it like in the back seat, and she just pull over and just share. She was very giving,
Yeah,
um,
what a great role
and
model.
yeah, very like fiercely loyal, protective, but just a very caring heart, leading with care, leading with love. And so that's my mom, and I miss her very much. My sister and I both miss her
Yeah,
a lot, and it's hard. But one of the things that I love doing is remembering her when she was a young person, because before our parents, we don't even know them.
yeah,
They're these whole adults with full lives.
yeah.
So as I've gotten older, and I'm like, ask her sisters, like, what was mom like when she was a kid? Like, what did she do? What was she mischievous, silly? And
You learn. What did you learn about her?
well, I learned that so my mom has a younger sister, a couple of younger sisters, two younger sisters and a younger brother. But the next child underneath her, my aunt, she was her first teacher. So when my mom was 5 and going in kindergarten, I believe my aunt was 3,
Wow.
and she taught her ABCs and her numbers and colors and everything. And so my aunt said that she always looked forward to my mom, her older sister, coming home, because she would sit down with her and she would teach her everything that she learned in kindergarten.
She was giving even as a young child. It was in her
Yes.
that way.
Yes. So that's Alice. That's my mom.
Yeah.
That's who she was. So,
I,
but
I
who are you remembering?
yeah.
Who's here for you?
Well, I already had in mind to share about my grandmother, who I'm actually named after. Her name is Guadalupe Medrano Carrasco. And, but what you're saying, I had like a whole other story I wanted to share about her. But what you're saying about how she was so giving is really making me think about that aspect of my grandmother. My grandmother was a migrant farm worker. When they came from Chihuahua, they went to New Mexico, and then my dad always says they went to California in search of the grapes of wrath. So when he was really young, they came out to the Fresno area, and they worked like in the grapes and the oranges, and they were, you know, migrant farm workers in the central California area. And so my grandmother, even though she had like 12 children and became a grandmother really young, because my aunt, my oldest tia, got married at 14 years old. So she started having children. So I have cousins that are older than my dad, right, who has also passed. But a really just beautiful story that my dad shared with me when he was young is that he would walk home from school. Back then, Catholic school was free; you didn't have to pay tuition. So she had enrolled him in Catholic school, and he was walking home. I think he was in middle school, early middle school, 6th or 7th grade, and he saw some unhoused man on, you know, on his way, and that, like, my dad, it hurt him, like that this person was hungry and they're like dirty. And so he said, come to my house, my mom will feed you. And so this man came with my dad, and my dad was, he was the younger set of the 12 siblings, so it was a huge house full of people. And they were all supported by my grandpa and grandma's you know, wages from working like in, you know, as migrant workers. But my grandmother didn't like chastise him. She didn't, you know, she didn't say no. She didn't give him the look. She just said, oh yeah, yeah, welcome, welcome. And, you know, she started to make extra tortillas and he sat at the table. And my dad did share that some of my aunts were kind of like, what are you doing? But my grandmother made sure that it was like very natural and normal, and welcomed this gentleman into the home and fed him. And then he went about his day. And it really, created a strong relationship between my dad and my grandmother. My dad passed away 15 years ago. My grandmother passed away before I was born, but he would always share these stories of compassion that she had for others. And then you also shared about your cousin and his union affiliation. So my grandmother, in that Fresno area, they were working in oranges when Cesar Chavez came through and was organizing the farm workers. And so my grandfather was a little bit more negative about it. You know, he was like, we need to feed the kids. Like, why are we going to, you know, go on strike? But my grandma said, no, we are going on strike. We're going to be in solidarity with all of the people. And she actually started to make, she was actually the one that made the tortillas. Like, they had a line, because you have to, the people have to eat. And if they're not working, they're not making money, they can't provide the food for their family. So my grandmother was one of the ones that helped, you know, making the tortillas and the beans and all of that for all of the strikers. Yeah, yeah. And
I love that.
yeah, I have other stories that I could share with you later about stuff that happened, but I just wanted to share that much because those two kind of like came to my mind hearing your family's stories as well. Yeah.
I love to hear that. I love hearing people's family stories, like their own just library and encyclopedia of your life and your family. And they're not always good stories. They're not. But there's places where we can learn, and traditions that we let go, and then traditions that we hold close to us and we keep. I wanted to ask you, like, what are some characteristics do you feel like you've gotten from your family? Like, maybe not necessarily just your mom, you know, we have extended family and it's very important, but like, what are some characteristics you feel like you've inherited?
I think from that side of the family, which is my, you know, my father, grandmother, I think that I also inherited that same sort of compassion and sort of optimism that people are good, and we've just been sort of taught like really just weird individualistic sorts of ways of being. But I think that people are good in their hearts, and that if we could just learn how all of us can be fed, like the technology exists for every human being on earth to have food and to eat well, right? Not just like have a basic meal. And so yeah, I think that's something I inherited from them. Like I strongly believe that a better world exists right here with all the resources that we have, and that we should be working towards that. Yeah,
That's very beautiful. I feel like our families, or the matriarchs in our families, are very similar.
yeah,
Because that's something that always mattered to me as well. Like, we were raised like that.
yeah.
And my mom also used to taught at freedom schools, like just after work she would teach.
Love it.
And you know, young people about just history, kind of like before ethnic studies, you have like people teaching like
Yeah,
Black history, African history, Indigenous history,
yeah,
just for their own, just for the sake of sharing the knowledge with young people and students. And so that's something that my mom did, and I feel like is something that I like to share,
yeah,
just different histories, our past, but a history that's very focused, like you were saying, on compassion and unity and taking care of everyone. And I love, I've worked at or volunteered giving food out at like soup kitchen, you know, Union Rescue Mission.
yeah,
But I very much agree with what you're saying in terms of just every day, no one having to worry about food, no one having to worry about a lot of things that we have to stress about, rent and other things.
right,
There's a lot of resources for us. And even now, or at one point, there were more homes than homeless people.
right.
So it's just a matter of how do we get these resources to everyone, because we should all have them. And then
Yeah.
when we have the food and we're warm inside, then it's so much easier to learn and to push forward things that are positive, and that's just not a barrier. You know, we can just use our mind and our imagination and
Yeah.
make it happen.
Yeah, we can thrive, not just survive, right? We can actually thrive, create art, and live to our highest potential. And I do believe that is possible. So
Yes.
that brings us to our community couch time daily journal question. Who is the ancestor that you want to bring to this space today, and why? Tell us a story. We want to know. Lakech.
And Lakech, thank you.
You.